Your bank sends you a notification. You spent $340 less than last month. You feel proud. The same bank could have sent a different notification. You spent $1,200 this month. Same number behind it. Completely different feeling. That same month, you actually spent $1,200. The bank chose to frame it as a discount from last month instead of a total. Both sentences are true. Only one was designed to make you feel good about spending. The framing effect. This is not a coincidence. It is one of the most studied techniques in modern marketing and finance communication. And once you can name it, you start seeing it in places you walked past 100 times without noticing. In the late 1970s, two psychologists named Daniel Kahneman and Amos Tversky ran an experiment that became one of the most cited studies in behavioral economics. And decades later, it still holds up every time researchers repeat it with new groups of people. They gave people a medical scenario. A disease is about to kill 600 people. Treatment A saves 200 people for certain. Treatment B has a 1/3 chance of saving everyone and a 2/3 chance of saving no one. Most people chose treatment A, the safe option. Saving 200 people for certain felt better than risking it all. Then they ran the exact same scenario again, with the exact same math, but described differently. Treatment A results in 400 deaths for certain. Treatment B has a 1/3 chance no one dies and a 2/3 chance everyone dies. Suddenly, most people switched. They chose treatment B, the risky option. Read that again. The outcomes were mathematically identical in both versions. Saving 200 out of 600 is the same as 400 dying out of 600. The only thing that changed was the words used to describe it. Saved versus died. Gain versus loss. That single change in language flipped the majority decision completely. This is the framing effect. The way information is presented changes the decision, even when the actual numbers never move. And once you understand this, you start noticing it everywhere in your financial life, not because it suddenly appeared, but because you finally have a name for something that was always quietly working on you. A credit card statement that says minimum payment due feels different than one that says remaining balance after this payment, even though both numbers come from the exact same account printed on the exact same page, on the exact same day. A savings account that shows you earned $12 in interest feels different than one that shows inflation reduced your purchasing power by $40. Even when both numbers are happening in the same account the same month. Companies know this. They are not choosing their language randomly. Entire teams test different phrasings on real customers before deciding which version of a sentence makes people feel best about handing over their money. Consider a gym membership. The contract rarely says you will pay $480 this year. It says less than $40 a month, about the cost of 2 coffees a week. The same total, completely different feeling. The monthly frame makes a real cost feel small, and it works specifically because your brain is much better at judging small numbers than it is at holding a large one in mind for very long. Retailers use this constantly. A jacket marked down from $200 to $150 feels like a $50 win. The actual relevant question, the one framing makes you forget to ask, is simpler. Do I need this jacket for $150, regardless of what it used to cost? The discount frame replaces the value question with a savings question. Those are not the same question, but they feel like they are, and that small substitution is doing almost all of the persuasive work in the entire transaction. The subscription services are masters of this technique. Cancel anytime frames a recurring charge as low commitment. The actual commitment is identical to a service with no cancellation option until the day you cancel. The frame just makes the ongoing charge feel weightless in the meantime. Framing in investment advice. Now here is where this connects directly to investing and to decisions you might be making this month. A financial advisor describing the same investment can use two completely different frames. Frame 1. This fund has averaged 7% annual returns over the last 20 years. Frame 2. This fund lost money in 4 of the last 20 years. Both statements can be true about the exact same fund. One frame emphasizes long-term growth. The other emphasizes short-term loss. Which frame gets used often depends on what the person describing it wants you to feel in that meeting, not on which frame is actually more complete or more useful to your decision. This is why reading raw performance data yourself matters more than trusting a single framed summary, even from someone well-intentioned. Anchoring through framing. There is a particularly sneaky version of framing that affects almost everyone, called anchoring through framing. A real estate listing priced at $495,000 instead of $500,000 is not meaningfully cheaper. It is psychologically anchored just under a round number threshold. Your brain processes $495 as belonging to a different, lower category than $500, even though the actual difference is $5,000. Retailers have used this 9-ending pricing technique for over a century, and it still works on people who know about it, including researchers who study it for a living. Knowing about a bias does not automatically immunize you against it. It just gives you a slightly better chance of catching yourself mid-decision. Let's go back to the title of this video for a moment. Losing $100 hurts more than winning $200 feels good. That is loss aversion, a concept this channel has covered before. Framing is the tool that lets institutions work around your loss aversion without ever triggering it. If losing money feels bad, the solution is simple from their side. Never describe it as a loss. Describe it as a discount, a special rate, a limited time opportunity, a monthly equivalent, anything except the word that would make your loss aversion fire in the first place. The money moving out of your account is identical either way. Only your felt experience of that movement changes. The Reframe Test. So here is the practical test you can start running this week. Whenever a financial decision is presented to you with a specific frame, mentally rewrite it using the opposite frame and see if you still feel the same way about it. If a subscription says just $2 a day, rewrite it as its annual total and ask if you would say yes to that number cold, with no monthly framing softening it. If an investment is pitched as average annual returns of 7%, ask explicitly about its worst single year and its longest losing streak. If a sale says 50% off, ask what you would pay if the original price never existed. No discount, no anchor, just the object and your honest willingness to pay for it today. This single habit, rewriting the frame before deciding, is one of the few defenses that actually works against a bias you cannot simply think your way out of, once you are already standing inside the frame someone else built for you. Framing in salary negotiation. There is a version of this that shows up specifically in salary negotiations, and it is worth naming directly. A company offering up to 15% annual bonus sounds generous. The actual average bonus paid out across the company might be 3%. Job postings use a similar technique with wide salary ranges. A range listed as $80,000 to $120,000 is wide enough that the actual number offered is often near the bottom of that range, while the frame still lets the company advertise the much more attractive number at the top. Asking directly for the median salary actually paid to people in that role, not the advertised range, cuts through the frame entirely. Credit card rewards programs frame everything in points, miles, or cashback percentages instead of dollars, specifically because abstract units are harder to compare than currency. Earn 5 times points on dining sounds significant until you convert it into actual dollars saved per year. Framing in insurance. Insurance is another area saturated with framing. A policy described as protecting against the worst-case scenario activates a very different emotional register than one described plainly by its actual annual premium cost versus its statistical likelihood of ever paying out at all. Both descriptions can be accurate about the same policy. One is designed to bypass your cost analysis entirely by going straight to fear. Even charitable giving uses framing deliberately and not always for bad reasons. A donation framed as less than the cost of a cup of coffee a day is designed to make a yearly total feel emotionally smaller than it is. The technique is identical whether the goal is generosity or profit. Framing itself is neutral. What matters is whether you can see it operating before you make the decision, not after. Who sets the frame first? There is one more layer worth understanding, because it explains why framing works even on people who are actively trying to resist it. Your brain does not evaluate numbers in isolation. It evaluates them relative to whatever reference point was placed in front of you first, even if that reference point was arbitrary. This is why negotiators are trained to state the first number out loud in any conversation before anyone else gets the chance. Whoever sets the initial frame controls the mental starting point everyone else measures against for the rest of the discussion, regardless of what the fair number actually is underneath it. This is not about lying or inflating numbers dishonestly. It is about understanding that the first frame anyone hears becomes the invisible ruler used to measure every frame that follows it. Knowing this changes how you can use framing for yourself, not just defend against it. Stating your own number first, in your own words, before someone else gets the chance to frame the conversation for you, is one of the few places where understanding this bias becomes genuinely useful rather than purely defensive. It is the one moment you get to hand someone else the ruler you built, instead of measuring yourself against theirs. Framing in public numbers. Government and political communication relies on this just as heavily as marketing does, on every side of the political spectrum. A tax change described as a 2% increase lands very differently than the same change described in the actual dollar amount it removes from a typical paycheck every 2 weeks. Inflation reports get framed the same way. Prices rose 3% this year sounds modest. Your money buys 3% less than it did 12 months ago, describes the same fact while landing as a tangible loss instead of an abstract percentage. And neither frame is incorrect. They are simply optimized for different emotional reactions to the same underlying number, and most people only ever hear one of the two. None of this means every framed message is manipulative or dishonest. Framing is unavoidable, in the same way that every photograph has to choose what stays inside the edges and what gets left out. Every sentence about money has some frame built into it, including every single sentence in this video. What changes once you understand framing is simple. You stop treating the first frame you hear as the only true description of a number. You start asking what the same fact would sound like described the opposite way before you decide anything. That question alone, asked consistently, is worth more than memorizing every bias this channel will ever cover.
Fine. Subscribe. It won't help, but it might make you slightly less easy to manipulate.